You know, one of the things we did at the beginning of summer is my family took a few days. We went down to Branson, Missouri, and one of the things that they have there is this place called Ripley's Believe It or Not. And maybe you used to watch this show on this or you've seen books on it or whatnot, but it's a pretty neat little place to go to. It's a place where a guy basically collected a bunch of things that no one else could actually believe were true and put them all into a building together to blow your mind on things. And so this morning I wanted to go ahead and play a game with you all for just a minute on, is that true? Sometimes in our life we have different things that happen and we kind of question, can that be real? That didn't really happen. And so many times we've had people conjure up things that kind of exaggerated just a hair. And so we start going, is that really true? Or are you just making that up? This morning I was in the foyer for just a minute ago, and I got to see a picture of a beautiful fish that Mason had caught over the weekend. He says, I caught an 8-pound catfish in this pond. And initially we would say, fisherman's tale, is that true? I don't know. And he pulls up this picture, and it's just a behemoth. I mean, it is awesome. And my next question was, did you keep it? He's like, no, but I got a picture. Okay, it's real. Is it true? So let's play a little game of is it true? Is it true that this dog has been a mayor for multiple years in a town? In Claremont, Minnesota, not too far from here, Duke of Great Pyrenees was elected mayor first in 2014. Duke has been the mayor there for 4 terms, and it's just retired because of his age. In dog years, he would be 92. He's kind of getting too old for the job. Starting to lose his doggy memory. Can't figure out quite how to do some things. That's actually true. So how about this one? Is it true that you can rent a grandma? Yes. In Brooklyn, New York, there's an older woman who started the business of renting a grandma. If you don't have a grandma or mom around, you can rent her and her friends, and they'll come over to your house. They will bring cookies. Pretty cool. They will tell you how good you are. They'll give you hugs. They'll be there for you and support you in your time of need when you don't have family around. Now, I'm just saying some of our older people that are retired, if you're looking for something to do, I could be a business manager in this. We can make this happen in Council Bluffs. Need a grandma, need a mom, we got you. What a great way, wouldn't it be, to start bringing people to the Lord by going, hey, you rent a grandma. Well, grandma says you need to go to church. So I can see that one pretty good, wouldn't it? How about this one? Is it true that Walt Disney Corporation is the second largest buyer of explosives in the world? They are. Outside of the United States military, Walt Disney buys more explosives than any other country or any other establishment in the world. They blow up more things than anybody in the world every year. You kind of got, that's why it's the greatest place on earth. It blows up stuff. All right, how about this one? You're not going to, well, you shouldn't ketchup with medicine. Believe it or not. Yep, in 1834, John Bennett created ketchup. He created ketchup and advertised it as medicine, and it sold for medicine for several years because it could cure indigestion, jaundice, and rheumatism. Did you know that? Now you know. See, you are getting so much smarter coming to church today. I feel better now that you've gotten to believe it or not. Can you believe this place is actually a desert? Antarctica is a desert. Doesn't look like a desert, does it? But according to the specifications for a desert, it has so little moisture that comes in the air that it is considered to be a desert by desert standards. Kind of interesting, huh? And finally, and I put this one in here for my wife, and I'm hoping she's watching online this morning, and you all may want to have a little bit of argument with me, and that's okay. Did you realize that espresso has less caffeine in it than coffee does? What? But I buy those espressos so that I'll get more excited. I paid the extra $4 for the mini cup. Well, guess what? An espresso has 150 milligrams of caffeine in it, whereas coffee has between 150 and 200 per cup. If you put that into the scenario, it takes 3 espresso shots to equal 1 cup of coffee from Starbucks. I want you to think about that. One 16-ounce cup of coffee at Starbucks has more caffeine in it than 2 espressos. Wow. Who would have thought? So it kind of gets us in this mindset and this idea of, is it true? Can that really be true? And you probably asked it before when people have kind of told you things, you kind of said, no way. I got to hear it from the horse's mouth. Is this really true? And as we get into our scriptures today, in our readings this past week, we come across a scenario in Daniel chapter 3 where this question is asked. Let's read it together. Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and the pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image made of gold. And that whoever does not fall down and worship it will be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We pay no attention to you, your Majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I've set up?" And there's the question. Is it true? Now, if we backtrack and we look at the scenario of what's really happened from chapter 1 on, we understand that Nebuchadnezzar has conquered the Jewish people. And in the midst of doing that, he's got a very revolutionary and great idea that he would take the best of the young Jewish men, and he would convert them into their way of life. The Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, their buddy Daniel, and some others would go and they would have to learn a new language. They would have to live a different lifestyle. They would be educated for 3 years so that they fully understood what Nebuchadnezzar wanted and how to live. It was even down to their very diet of what they were going to do. They were going to do a total assimilation. And after the 3 years were over with, everything had worked so well. They were so knowledgeable. Everything had gone the way that he had been told that was supposed to go. And Nebuchadnezzar says, I'm going to put these 3 men over my affairs in Babylon. Now, you can only imagine the leadership that was already there, how frustrated and angry they must have been at the idea that these foreigners would come in just a short amount of time without all this extra grooming, without all these years in history and background of how much they knew about the country. They didn't fight for this or anything else. They were just captives, that they now are in charge. And when Nebuchadnezzar sets up this great plan that he's going to make this huge golden image of himself, and he's so egotistical that he says, everybody, when they hear my players playing music, must bow and do great things. Now, see, this inspired me when I was in college. And I thought, this is kind of cool. And so whenever I was a senior, and we had pledges coming into our social service group, otherwise known as a fraternity, my pledge had special duties. And one of the duties that he had to do is whenever he heard the bells go off at Oklahoma Christian, which those of you all who went to OC know it goes off every half hour, no matter where he was, he had to drop at that time, start doing push-ups and say certain phrases. I didn't care what he was doing, it had to be done. And if anybody in our group saw him not doing it, then there was severe punishment. So I would intentionally have him go do errands during those times so that he would have to do that. As a matter of fact, I would try to make him do errands whenever there would be certain female that he might be impressed with to do that, just to relinquish my incredible power and lord over him as the president of our group. I got inspired by the Bible, what can I say? Okay? Here Nebuchadnezzar is so full of himself that he considers himself pretty much to be a god himself. And he has his plan, and he does this. And when the harps and the flutes and the lyres all start going off, you see this dropping like you've never seen before. The entire culture, everyone that's there throughout the entire city, hits the floor, except for three guys. It blows through, they all go down there kind of like, whoop-de-doo. Yep. Mm-hmm. Keep on walking. Got places to go, things to do. And these other officials see their opportunity. And they go to him and they say, look, this is what's happening. And Nebuchadnezzar is looking at this going, this cannot happen. You're lying. You're just jealous of them. Because there's no way that anybody that I've trained for 3 years, that understands their position, who knows who I am, who should be grateful for what I've done, would ever not obey me. And it brings me to my first point, that as Christians, we are called to be true. We are called to be true to God. In all things, we are called to be true to him. God has set us up to a standard that we are to live by because we love him. Because Christ gave himself up for us, because we committed to that, God has an expectation that he would like for us to achieve. Even when the world doesn't like what that is, even when it's not the most popular thing to do, God still calls for us to be true to him first. Now, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were good workers. They ran that city well for Nebuchadnezzar. They tried hard to be very successful for him. They laid out and followed his guidelines. They made sure that people were doing the right thing. But when it came to the point to where they had to choose between God and Nebuchadnezzar, they stayed true. And God calls for us to stay true. Look what they say. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this manner. Well, that's kind of rough way to start, isn't it? I mean, think about this, Kelly. Hey, can you be true? Hey, I ain't got to talk to you about nothing. Oh, kind of bold, isn't it? He's already said you die. I will throw you in a furnace and I'll burn you up if you don't do it. I say, well, I ain't got to talk to you about this. We don't need to defend ourselves. If we're thrown into a blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Like, we're not sweating small stuff. Here's my favorite part. But even if he doesn't, we want you to know, Nebuchadnezzar, your majesty, he's still giving him respect, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you've set up. That's standing up for what's true. Hey, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to pick a fight. But when it comes to doing what's for God and doing what's for the world, when you ask me to compromise God, I will not. And I don't have to defend myself on why I won't. Because I know God has got me covered. Oh, you're going to make my life difficult at work? I'm not worried about it. Oh, I'm not going to be the popular person on my block anymore? I can live with that. Oh, you're going to label me as one of those Christians? Okay. But I'm not compromising. And even if, let's put it in today's terms, even if you make my life horrible, even if I were to lose this job, even if God chooses not to deal with the way that I want him to, I still won't serve. I still won't compromise. Because God has my everything. Because God is my God. And nothing comes before him. The thing we need to realize is that when we make that kind of a statement, that our God will always be true to us too. See, this is the big moment right here because they understand this. It's really hard for us to stand against the world and stand against what is socially acceptable and to take a stance on something that is not going to be popular if we don't have reassurances that God has our back. But he does. In Deuteronomy 31:6, it says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you, and he will never forsake you." Isaiah 41 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you." God's saying to him, "Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." I've got you. I'm not going to walk away from you. You stand up for me, and I will be there for you. Will you have to pay a price socially sometimes? Yes. Yes, you will. But God's not going to walk away from you when you do. We need to understand that God will not have us go through the fires alone. God never called for us to go through these difficulties alone. As we read the rest of the story, we start to see that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they make their stance, and Nebuchadnezzar, being true to his word, takes them and throws them into that furnace. A furnace so hot that the guards trying to throw them in die trying to get them into the furnace. And these three men stand inside the furnace. And he's screaming, "Get it hotter, get it hotter." There's nothing that could ever survive that. And as he's watching, he's looking, his mask starts to have a little bit of a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I could have sworn I only threw 3 in there. Did we just throw 3 in there? Yeah, did one of the guards fall in there with? No. Okay, so you count for you. How many you count? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you smell anything roasting? I don't smell anything roasting. We got a problem here. Bring those guys out. And as they come out, you see 1, 2, 3. See, God stood with them. God not only put his hand of protection on them, God could have just went, "Watch this, flame retardant, poop." That's pretty cool. He didn't go there. God said, "No, I want you to know that I am with you when you walk through this. I am in the fire with you. I'm not only going to tell you how to get past it, I'm not only going to show you that you can be protected, but when you start going through that, I'm with you. You and me, we're rubbing elbows. We're doing this together. You're not alone." Sometimes the hardest things in the world is to make a stance when you feel like you're all alone. And God understood that. In 2 Chronicles 16:9, it says, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him." I love this scripture so much because it makes me start to think about this idea that God has his eyes scanning through the earth, watching and looking, going, "Where are my people? I'm looking for my people. Who's really committed to me? Who's taking a stance today? I'm looking so that I can just empower them even more because I see what you're doing. I know what you're committed to." When those words start to come out of your mouth, they go against all the social norms. He says, "I hear those words and I'm there for you. And I know it may be scary, but I'm there for you. I'm there for you." Holding strong to following God in the small things prepares us for the big things. What do I mean by that? You read your readings this week, and you go back to this week, you go back to chapter 1. We've got these same guys with their buddy Daniel. They've been captive, they've been brought into Babylon, they've been in the process of being transformed. And part of what the king expected them to do was to eat the royal foods, the best of the best, and drink the royal wine. He wanted them to have the luxury, the peak, the pinnacle of everything. Oh, no, you're not on the cheap stuff. You're not eating McDonald's. You're at the steakhouse. See what I'm saying? You're not going to Long John Silver's. You're going to an elegant place to eat every day. You get the best, the freshest, the what everybody else wished they could touch, because I'm going to show you what it's like to be underneath my service. And in the midst of this, they realize, but the best is not what God wants us to have. What you call the best, God calls toxic. And in the small things, they just go up and instead of trying to start a fight, they just say, hey, guy who's feeding us, we really would rather not eat that. Why don't you give us just a little bit of time? We'll eat the way that we think is best. You eat the way that you want to, and in a couple of days, you can check on us to see what you think. They stood up in the small things, and God rewarded them. Because when they were checked up on, they changed the whole regimen of everyone else, how they even ate. Because of the small things, they knew that they could win the big things. For some of you all this morning, God's calling for you to stand up for him. And you may not be at the point where there's a furnace. Today, right now, it may just be the food. In your Christian walk, you may not be there yet. And that's okay. Standing up for the small things is what builds our faith in God, that builds us our strength so that whenever the big things come, we can handle them. Standing up for the small things, like, yeah, you know what, I'm just not going to be a part of those jokes. Standing up for the small things of, I'm just not going to say those things. Standing up for the small things of, hey, I just don't think I feel comfortable going there. Hey, I'm not going to open that email. The small things. Hey, I do things a little bit different. I know that's how you do your things, and I know this is your stance on this. But for me and my house, we're going to do this. Not a big deal to you. It's kind of a big deal to me. We can still get along. We'll all be friends. The small things. Because there's going to come a time in our lives when it's going to be a big thing. And if you've not stood up for the small things, you'll not have the power to stand up against the big ones. Luke 16:10 says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is also unjust in much. Jesus says so clearly, if you can't handle the small things, you're not going to be able to handle the big ones. Through our faith and obedience, God's power and majesty is shown, and rewards are given. See, we show how awesome God truly is by going through the fires, by standing up in the hard times. Anybody ever been to Cripple Creek, Colorado? It's not really a destination kind of place, but it is known for something. Long time ago, they found this mineral that we use a lot, beryllium. And you're like, well, what is that? Beryllium is really, really important because it's what helps vulcanize rubber. Did you drive your car today? You wouldn't be driving on those tires if it wasn't for beryllium. Okay? It's also in glass ceramics. And for some of us old timers, CDs and DVDs aren't made without beryllium. So a long, long time ago, they found beryllium in Cripple Creek when they were mining. This huge action started to happen, and this like way, way back in the day before central heat and air and all that other stuff. It was like old school mining. And they would go through, but the problems they had was they found that beryllium was mixed with tellurite ore as well. So when they would go through and they were harvesting beryllium, they'd have these nuggets of tellurite ore, and they would just pitch them to the side, and they just made these big piles of it. It's a black rock. Looks a lot like coal. Well, one of the workers one day grabbed a hold of some of it thinking that it was coal. And it was cold, and so he put it into his fire at night in his little cabin tent thing. And he burned all night, and the next morning he was cleaning out his ashes. And he was sifting through the ashes to get them out of his house. He noticed this little gold sparkly stuff in there. And what they didn't realize until that moment was that tellurite ore is made of beryllium and gold. And if you refine it in fire, the tellurite ore, all the bad stuff goes away, and the gold solidifies into gold nuggets. I can only imagine what it must have been like for that guy whenever he is sifting through the ashes. He finds gold, and he realizes, we're mining for the wrong thing here. This is a gold mine, literally. Can you imagine when he goes to his boss and he goes, you're not going to believe this, but watch this. And I'm sure his boss probably said the comment of, is that true? Come on, that can't be true. And he pulls out his little pocket of gold and he says, it's true. It's true. And as we start to think, as I talked to you all this morning, and as you talk sometimes to experienced Christians over time, and they'll say, hey, if you just follow God in the small things, the big things you'll be able to handle. And we look at that and go, is that really true? I don't know. You're talking about some major stuff here, and I'm not really for sure that I could really stand up and say these things. I'm not really for sure that I could take this stance in our culture with my job that I have. I'm not really for sure that wouldn't it just be better if I stay silent and don't say anything? Wouldn't it be better, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you bowed but you didn't really worship? What if you tied your shoe right at that moment? What if we tried to do just something that we know the truth. God knows the truth. I'm not really worshiping anything else, so it's okay. And you need to hear what I'm saying to you. That if you could stand for the small things, when that moment happens, when your faith is truly put to the test, when God calls for you to stand up for Him in something that's going to be more uncomfortable than you've ever experienced before, you will be able to handle it, and God will be there for you. There's gold nuggets that happen when you're refined. And the only way we get there is by trusting God when we go in the furnace. The greatest blessings that God will ever give to you are after you are faithful to Him. The greatest gifts that can be given to you is whenever you've gone through the fire, when you stood up for Him, and when it's all said and done, you walk out of it. And the things that matter are still the things that matter. And all the things in the world that have been piled up on you have been burned off. And the true majesty and the glory of God is finally shown. In Revelation 2:10 it says, be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. And God says, be faithful stand up for me and trust me no matter what. I've got you. Eternal life is waiting for you. Believe me that when I tell you that there's a place better than this earth that there is. Didn't Jesus say that? I'm going to prepare a place for you. I've got something better for you. Romans 14, it says, if we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or we die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned his life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. Whether things go well or they don't, whether I lose opportunities or I don't, God is still going to be with me. If I don't turn from him, he won't turn from me. It's a message we all need to hear. In the world that we live in today, that asks for us to compromise on a continual basis, for us to justify things that God is not okay with, as it runs rampant inside churches in general right now, trying to conform to the world, thinking that we're doing what's best for people who are living in sin by condoning their sin. God says, stand up for what's right. It's going to be tough, but there's gold going through the fire. See, because this is how it ends. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they go out of that fire. They go see Nebuchadnezzar. And when it's all said and done, because they defied Nebuchadnezzar, because they went against his orders, he comes to the realization, because God protected them, your God is the real God. And everybody will worship your God. Nobody will speak against your God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Our culture will change because of your faithfulness, because of your God providing for you. Because I finally saw by your obedience to him, not me, how powerful your God truly is. And there are people around you that need to see Jesus in you that way. They need to see you be strong for something you believe in, something that really matters. This morning, maybe you've kind of been dealing with that a little bit. Maybe you've really been set at a point where you feel like you're asked to be compromising some things that you don't want to compromise. You've been asked to turn and look away as other things are kind of going on that you know that God does not want, or they've been asking you directly to make statements that go against what God says. And you've tried to avoid it, and you've tried not to ruffle any feathers. But you need to understand there's going to come a day when they're going to ask you directly. And what's your stance going to be? Are you going to stand with him? Or are you going to compromise and bend down like you're tying a shoe? And privately say, God, I'm really sorry. You know I don't really mean it. Are you going to save a life by standing up for yourself and for God? Are you going to let things continue the way that they are? Maybe some of you all today just need a little strength in being ready to do that. This morning we want to offer you an opportunity to come and we can pray with you to give you that strength. And maybe for some of you all have never made that commitment to God. And you want to have that safety and that security, knowing that when the fires come, that he's got your back. And maybe today is the day that you say, Lord, I want you completely. I'm ready to make that commitment. I'm ready to follow you in the small things and the big things. And I've got to start this relationship with you. And I know the only way that I can do that is through the cross. And Jesus has already died on it. And now he asks me to obey you. to acknowledge that he is the Son of God, that he did die on that cross for me, that I am a sinful person. There's no other way to get to you, Lord, except through him. And that I show you that I want that with everything that I am by acknowledging that and being baptized in the water. If we can help you with either one of those this morning, will you allow us to do that as we stand and as we sing?